it's always more dramatic than it needs to be. I gotta find like a calm startup music. Hey everybody. We are talking tonight about blogging and using GitHub to do it, which is a little bit weird of a topic. If you've joined some of my recent streams that I've done with other folks, this is in that same informal vein that we're going to just kind of chat through a topic. It's not a class. This isn't a service we're trying to promote. It's just something that we know how to do, and it would be fun to share. And I am joined this evening by Henrik. Some of you are well familiar with him from Twitter, and you'll probably be seeing a bunch more of him here and there. I look forward to doing some code review stuff with you in the future.
Sounds good. Likewise, likewise. And while it may be evening where you're at, today here in Los Angeles, California, it's just about noontime, so I'm fresh. I'm ready to go do this.
Okay. So let's talk about what the heck are we even talking about? Because there has been some discussion in the Business Central community about blogs and all sorts of things like that, and that people need to be doing more writing it down and making it searchable. But the challenge is that it feels a little bit like an effort to get things started because of two different paths you can take. You can own all of your content, but then you own all the problems. So, for example, you can set up WordPress for yourself, but then you've got to get updates and you get emails about potential breaches and all those fun things, which I think you're currently experiencing with some of your platform.
Yeah, I have a couple of blogs out there. I used to do a lot of stuff with eShip, which is a product here in the US for Funimation and Business Central. And yeah, it runs on a WordPress site, and that used to be the if you don't nobody if you don't use WordPress, and it was super simple. But as you know, WordPress have grown and evolved a lot over the years, and to the point where a lot of hackers and spammers think, well, there's a 95% chance that this website I want to try and break is on WordPress. So I spent most of my time dealing with security updates, security warning, this, that, and the other. And truth be told, I mean, the eShipGuy.com, I really don't update anymore. However, I do get a lot of visitors on that page because I do have a long collection of tracking URLs. I mean, that people include in their emails and stuff. So I started with going down the road. Well, what's the best way for me to kind of get this site into a static page and kind of a low resource thing, so I don't have to spend too much money on a big heavy server.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So Hugo, I mean, I did some research on, and this guy, you know what, I might try and go down this route. And you came in front and said, "Oh yeah, I've actually started working on something, and I can automate the process." And I was just kind of like, "Well, do tell."
So to bring it back, the paths where you own the WordPress and you own the problems, you own the blog site, and that's all good, or you set up under any number of free blogging platforms and then you don't own the content. We had some issues over the years where people were doing a great job of making really good blog post contents all over the place in some of the community hosted sites and things like that as part of that community space, and then the community shut down or the blogging feature shut down and all of the content disappeared. Yep. There was no opportunity for people to preserve that content under their own control. So there was this icky sort of choice that you had of, I could accumulate all this knowledge and possibly lose it, or I can accumulate all this knowledge and manage a site for myself. And based on your recommendation of looking at Hugo, I realized that there was a potential for adding a third option set to people in our space. And for those of you who aren't aware, or don't, somehow, I don't know how you would have found this video if you weren't aware, but there's a new thing I've got hosted through Mailbrew where you can get summary emails of blogs. So that way you don't necessarily have to follow all the individual blogs and see, out of the 100 that are out there, which three have updated today. And plenty of tech savvy folks are pretty comfortable with doing RSS feeds. And I talked about that a little bit earlier in the spring, but I think this was an easier low-tech solution for people. And there's about 200 to 300 people subscribed to that. So there's now a real hungry audience that if you tell me, hey, I've got a new blog up, can you add this to your list? You have a built-in audience of 300 people right away, day one. So there's now more momentum. You're not going to run into a situation of who's going to pay attention, who's even going to see it. I can already tell you 300 people are going to see it, and that's only going up. So let's talk a little bit about what the heck is Hugo, because now we've mentioned it a couple of times, and we haven't really defined what that actually is. And I think I kind of put together a little bit of at least a what is it. Let's The way that it describes itself is an open source static site generator. And what that means is you have a whole bunch of content that is written in a formatting called Markdown, which is like an easier version of HTML. So it's a simplified way of marking up your text to say, here's all the different formats. I want to include images, blah, blah, blah. And then there are templates that are applied from different packs of themes. And those things combine together using this little Hugo engine to produce what is called a static site, an HTML plus the style sheets, CSS pages. And unlike running a blog with WordPress and all those different things, there's no database. There's nothing to hack. There's no way that someone can interact with your site in such a way that you have to worry about it. And that was just such a fascinating and powerful thing. And part of why I asked Henrik to join is because he told me about this. I've used a couple of similar static site generators, but he clued me into this, and I went, "Wow, this is." You're going to hear a lot more about Hugo.
It is definitely, it is. I mean, what I love about it is the simplicity of it. I love that it doesn't require this big machine behind it. It is literally, yep. You,
Yeah.
it's just kind of a very simple way of doing it. But it gets the job done, and as you say, it's static HTML. There's no database to hack.
Yep.
It is what it is.
Which also means, viewers, that it is incredibly fast and easy for search engines to parse.
Yep.
So those are both really big deals. A lot of people spend a lot of time and effort trying to tune WordPress to be searchable and optimized and fast. And the more widgets and pieces you add into your blog engines, the slower it slowly goes. So the other piece of the puzzle is this makes a whole bunch of HTML and CSS files, but obviously you have to have those somewhere, and that's part of that. If you own the tech stack, you're now a part-time server administrator. You have to find a hosting package that maybe it's free, maybe it charges a certain amount per month. You have to potentially know how to administer the site and all that sort of thing. And part of a project Henrik and I are working on together, there's a different way. GitHub, well, historically we know it as a repository of open source code, has functionality within that ecosystem to serve, as long as you're, not a heavily trafficked website that's, going to get a million hits, they're fine with hosting basic HTML files as part of repositories through the GitHub platform. And so when you combine the fact that GitHub can run Hugo, the part that transforms all of these markdown and templates into the flat files, and they'll serve those flat files to people who come visit your website, it's a no-brainer home run. For folks who are familiar with some of the technologies that we're going to be looking at today, in the about 10 minutes we've been talking, I tested it out earlier. I could have already set up and been done. That's how relatively easy it can be to get this going. So, speaking of which, let's talk about what tools we're going to need today to get going. The I went through to figure out what are the absolute easiest ways to go about setting this up for folks who have great knowledge of the application, but maybe they've never logged into GitHub before. Command line is a little bit scary. Those sort of, or just don't have the time to learn all these different commands. All of those apply. So these are the tools that we're going to be making use of today, and running down simple stuff here. Chocolatey is an oddly named little thing, but basically it's a market space back end for Windows applications to quickly and easily get set up without having to run a install wizard and next through all the defaults. So with a single command, one can easily install something on your machine. And that's pretty helpful. You'd also, of course, need a GitHub account. If you've never signed up for one before, you'll need one. Go figure. The GitHub website also has a downloadable thing called Github Desktop, and this installs a bunch of prerequisites along with it invisibly for you. Does it nice and easy, and we'll make use of that platform to take what we're going to set up in GitHub and make a copy in your local machine that we can then populate with all the Hugo stuff and push it back to GitHub and say, there we go, we're ready to go. A nice to have, and I will make use of it today, is Visual Studio Code, and I recommend having that one because you'll be able to experience what it's like to edit some of the markdown files and be able to preview it. And once we're past the setup stages, I will show you how from anywhere you'll be able to access a Visual Studio web environment without having to even be on your machine. You just need to be able to log into your GitHub account, any web browser. You can just start editing your markdown. So that'll be really cool stuff. So with those steps involved, I will be I'm streaming this right now on YouTube. I'm going to have all of the links to these different pieces of software in the YouTube description once I'm done recording tonight. But most of them are pretty easy to find. Chocolatey has a straightforward install now button, and it will install your Chocolatey commands. So that'll be good. GitHub also isn't terribly difficult to find, github.com, and you'll need to create an account on there with whatever email you want to attach to your GitHub account. And GitHub also has the desktop client, which is just at desktop.github.com. So those are the different pieces that we're going to be making use of today. And again, I will definitely link those in the comments afterwards, so you're not going to be alone on how do I find these different pieces. Okay, so those are the tools that we're going to have. I've got them installed already, so I'm not going to do a recording of me doing step through all of the individual installs. But what we are going to do today with those tools is three main steps. We're going to create the Hugo site, and how do we make it for the first time? How do we build our website infrastructure? And we'll need something called a theme, and that is going to create the skeleton for what the site appears like, how it works, and all that sort of thing. We'll talk a little bit more about that in detail, of course. We'll need to look at how do we make a new repository on GitHub, which is going to be your workspace for the Hugo site, and how do we set that up so that it'll present all the things that should be presented, and how will GitHub run the Hugo system to make your content live. And then last but not least, we'll talk about, with a Hugo site up and running, how do you adjust it? How do you potentially update pieces of info? When you want to go make a new blog post, how do you do that? So the only things that we'll be talking about today, that once you've gotten through the basics of this process, you're just going to need to be worried about doing the edit and create step over and over again. So not too shabby. I think it's pretty easy to work through a lot of these things. So we'll jump in, I guess. The first thing that we probably want to do is, if you haven't installed anything via Chocolatey before, it is a command line thing. So let me open up our command prompt and I will show you a quick look at your basic Chocolatey commands. So nothing too crazy. It is Choco install Hugo. And in my case, it's going to tell me that I'm installing the following packages. And in this case, I already had it installed. And it's letting me know that it's going to update my Hugo. And am I okay with running this Hugo package that'll do the install script? Yeah, I'm okay with that. Yeah. So yep, there we go. And away we go. Bam. And you'll see what it does is it goes out to a GitHub site and downloads the latest release of something. And in this case, the Hugo release from Go Hugo IO. It goes and grabs that and runs an install script under the hood. And there we go. We now have the Hugo system. That's up and running. So now what do we do with that? Well, let's see here. Okay. We need to create, and I'm checking notes off camera, so apologies for the occasional pause there. Okay, so great. Okay, so we've got that up and running. We are going to need a folder where this website will live. So I'm going to drop to my temporary folder here. And that is over on my E drive. And there we go. What we do to create a new Hugo website is let's do Hugo new site. And I'm following a cheat sheet that I will also link in the YouTube comments, but this is pretty much it. What should we call this one today? Let's call this one Hello Henrik, if I can type correctly.
I was just about to say, but living here in the US, I'm used to be called Henry or Hank. So,
okay. So what I've done now is it spins up. Congratulations, your new Hugo site is created. It made a folder, and it tells us a couple of steps that we would want to do. So the very first things it tells us to do is that we should download a theme. And so we'll talk about that in just a sec. And you might just perhaps want to add some content. I feel like there needs to be some sarcasm marks around the perhaps, but
right.
We're not going to go into it in detail today because it's not a necessary step. You don't have to do this, but one of the nice little options is by having done that Chocolatey install Hugo, we in fact have the ability to run this little command Hugo server in that folder, and it will effectively be a browser. We can just, or it'll be a host, and we can open it up in our browser and see what it looks like in real time. So that's kind of nice. If we look, it had created the Hello Henrik folder, and you'll see it's got some folders that we're going to get to know pretty well over our process here. Hopefully, okay, I was seeing if I could cheat a little and zoom in on my Explorer because I don't know how easy that is to make out some of the things, but that's all right. We have the content folder, which is going to be where content for the website lives. At the moment, it's empty. Go figure. um, and we'll have a theme folder here, and that's where the themes are going to be installed. And we also have this config.toml file, which I admit I don't know what the TOML stands for. Maybe someone in the chat knows. But it's effectively a text file, so we can just open that right up with just to show that it's just text. I'm going to open it up with Notepad here, and we can see that at the very, very basics, it has where is the website going to live at, what's your default language code, and what should the title of the site be. Now, that brings us to its recommendation. At the very first here is that you should download a theme, and it even gives you a link to the theme website. So let's pop that open here, themes.gohugo.io. And if you've ever worked with WordPress or anything like that, I don't know if chat's serious that that's Tom's obvious minimal language. I, ooh, I hope that's a joke. Um, uh, so if we look at themes, they can dramatically change how you want your site to appear. There's lots of different categories. There's tons to browse through. Some of them are really, really elaborate and interesting. Some of them might just be splash pages for if you just want to have kind of a profile page about you and that sort of thing. They can be very dramatically different. So there are lots and lots of different ways that you can have your website configured, and they're pretty nice. Most of these will have a little bit of how to start, and it tells you a couple of different things that you can do with downloading the theme manually, and then we paste it into the theme folder. I am going to follow some fun little steps here. Almost all of them have this option. Say if you don't want to make any radical changes, I don't want to make any radical changes, we can use a command line right here that allows us to do something funky called git submodule add. Sounds a little scary. All we're going to be doing by running this command is say that in the themes folder, for, in this case, hello friend, we want a copy of this repository that this theme maker, we want a copy of that to be attached so that when we push this into GitHub, it'll always go get the latest information from this repository and use it to build our website. So if there's any bug fixes, improvements, all that sort of stuff, we just get them. Nice and easy. No maintenance that way. So I'm a pretty big fan of that. I know Henrik had identified a theme that he's going to give a try out. So you'll see by the end of this run through that we're going to have a couple of different aesthetics to the whole thing. I am going to try out in my install for us today. There is this Hugo theme that I kind of liked a bit. It's got a decent little menu system up here. It's got some nice little profile things under an avatar, but we can still jump into blog posts. So it looks pretty blog-like. We get a little preview and category stuff, all the things. I do have to admit though, I laughed. I looked at it only originally because I thought this theme was called Dolt. Which I was like, well, that's just perfect for tonight because that's about the level of which I'm operating at this time of night. But no, it's do it, as in just do it. So I had to laugh about that. Okie doke. So, in theory, with this one, much like everywhere else, they're going to tell us that your steps to getting started is Hugo. You got to make your new site folder or whatever you're going to call it. And then he suggests that what you should do is do that git submodule add command. And he also gives us a little bit of a hint of something that some of the other docs might not do that is a good idea called this git init. So we're going to check that out in just a sec here. But what this will do is it will create a little set of themes for us. So that's cool. I like it. All right. So let's go down here into our Hello Henrik. So into the Hello Henrik folder. I do occasionally think about the fact that we all of us in the space that we're working in, many of us grew up with or learned command prompt as an adult, and I don't know that I've ever watched my kiddo use a command prompt, command line. I'm
I kind of feel, the in my experience in IT, it's going back to how it was. I remember when I went to college, right? We had a big mainframe in the office, and we were all working with dumb terminals and click, 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 to everybody having to have Windows or OS 2 or something on their desktop. And now, with putting things back in the cloud, it's kind of, well, the difference between the cloud and having a big, a room that's just one big computer, it's kind of the same thing, right? I mean, and yeah, and now, I mean, there are things even when you manage your Office 365 environment. Yeah, if you want to do this, yeah, you have to spin up a PowerShell command because there's no other way to do it. So yeah,
yeah.
I do find that interesting.
And it's funny. I do. When I moved out of country, I got rid of all of my old tech books, but the only one I saved was a DOS for Dummies books, just for the laugh. And it's funny that it's coming back around to being relevant again.
Yeah.
So, alrighty. Well, I'm going to follow this guy's advice. And here he's telling us after we've created the website, the first thing we do is we go into the folder and then we pick, which option do we want to do. I want to do that submodule add thing. Well, the cool thing is his little website, he's got this copy to clipboard widget. So I will click that guy and boop. Now, he had us do this little git init command. If those of you who are watching are not familiar with Git, what this did is it told my system that we want to keep track of the files that are in this folder for changes, and that's kind of a preparatory step for putting things into the GitHub ecosystem, hence the name. So that was a kind of preparing sort of progress. Now, if we look in themes, there's now a folder called Do It, which has all of the different bits and pieces, and that's pretty cool. So now I've got my theme installed with one little command. And when I put this on GitHub, it'll stay updated. So then each theme will generally have some different tips of what makes sense to think about for configuring the different options. So we saw that in my config.toml file, it only had the base URL, it had a title, and I think a default language code. This theme has lots more options. It can potentially have, for example, a main menu where it shows tags and categories, which is what's up top here. He must have also added in, well, I say he, they must have added in their theme all of like the series author showcase. So you can really kind of be flexible with this. I'm going to, for my sanity's sake, copy his basic configuration file here, and I'm going to replace mine that we were looking at earlier with exactly that. So let's pop open that. Boop. Now, obviously, this is still wrong at the moment because it's pointing to example.org, but we're going to get there. So let's save that. All right. That gave us some basic stuff. We could do some things like creating our first post. There's a way that you can say, where should the post live? We're going to do that in GitHub. So, and he also tells us that you can do that Hugo serve and it'll launch the website, which takes so little time that we might as well just do that real quick. And Blah, 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 and here it is. Now I can open up my basic little web Hugo site, and there's nothing to it. It's just posts, tags, and categories, a menu. I can switch between different dark modes and light modes, so that's kind of nice. And it's called my new Hugo site. And if I go to edit this little settings file, nothing crazy in here. I can change this up to Hello Henrik. And you can see in real time it gave us the Hello Henrik. So pretty cool. And let's see here. I don't know. Now, I'm when I installed the chocolatey, did the install Hugo. I already had Hugo installed. I don't know if you have to potentially close your command prompt and reopen it to get the access to the command. So just something to be aware of because I jogged my memory there. I know that's something I've run into. So that gave us our very basic website. We're effectively ready to go with, we now have done, as part of our plan for today, I'll show you behind the scenes of my elaborate PowerPoint. We have created the Hugo site. We made it. We did some basic configuration. We're going to have to tweak it a little bit once we know like the URL and that sort of thing. We've got a theme installed, so let's go visit GitHub. So on GitHub, if you're logged in, you can create a new repository, and you can also import repository. And I think, yeah, import is from other systems. So we do want to do new. Okay, so I'm going to make this one under my personal login, and I am going to call this one Hello Henrik. Repository names have to be unique per person or organization. So, you know, you'll be making this under yours rather than any company ones. For me, I'm going to make this public. I believe if you're on free GitHub, if you want pages, then you have to make the repository public. Which is no big deal. It just means that they can see the stuff, the markdown source of your code. It does not necessarily mean that they have free reign to, you know, muck about in it. You still choose who can make changes. So that's okay. I'm not going to give a description to this now. I'm going to be lazy. So we'll create that. Okay. So it now gives us some basic different things that we could do. It's giving us some quick setup if we've done this sort of thing before, which is such an amusing way of saying if you know what you're doing. Let's see, and then we can create new repos, or we can push existing ones, or we can import code. Well, when we ran the commands that he recommended to get our to get things up and running, we had done that little command called git init, and that meant that we already have in our local folder here an existing repository. So I can go ahead and copy this chunk of code, and you would be able to as well. And what this will do is it automatically hooks up your little local folder to this new repository you just made. It will set up the website version with everything that it should have and push all of your stuff in here. So we'll grab that and away you go. And yeah, nothing. What? I gotta love when we run into Git errors while live streaming. That's always fun.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
Otherwise it wouldn't be fun.
I think you're right. Failed to push some refs. Respec main doesn't match any. I wonder if the git init made it a different branch name.
Yeah, I mean it's one of those where I honestly tend to, every time I have to create a new repository, I create it in Git and then clone it, because that way it's just easier. I feel like it's easier.
It certainly can be. So I'm just going to take a look and see what did I do that has me off track here for a sec. Uh, because I'm okay. Oh, you know what? We did not do is he had us do that git init command. We made some changes, but we haven't actually saved those changes as far as git's concerned. So
That's
that's
right.
what's up. So we needed a little bit of a mix of commands here. So I will take these commands that you're seeing here and also detail those a little bit in the YouTube description of what did we do, because you can see here he's this command is saying if we wanted to make a new repo, we need to do git init, and then we'll also need to commit things, and then we can add stuff. So that's what we're missing, is the fact that nothing from Git's point of view is saved. And now we should be able to push. Da-da-da. I wonder how many people watching knew enough to be screaming at me of, you fool, you haven't committed anything. So now if I refresh this, I did not get all the things I expected to get. Cool. That's fun. It only committed the themes folder. That's exciting. Okay. One of the things that is really helpful, and I recommended it as a tool, and then I just didn't use it. So that was well done on my part. One of the things that is really helpful is GitHub Desktop teaches you lots of bits and pieces. So if we pop open that GitHub Desktop that I mentioned, and we browse to that via the file, add local repository, and we pick that folder that we just picked, it'll give us, so here I'm looking at my Hello Henrik. If I add the repository, then instead of doing all sorts of commandy stuff, I can say, oh, okay, well, here it's got all my files that haven't changed. Make the things. And this little commit, think of this as this is saying save. And now we have some stuff that we can push to GitHub. So there we go. Push. And we come back up a step, and there we go. So now we've got our config file hanging out here. So that's cool and all, but obviously there's no browsability to that. So what do we do with that? Well, in the settings, there is a section down here called Pages. And the cool thing is that we can turn on GitHub Pages. But you'll see here, it's going to do something funky. It's going to ask you, and I'm going to bump up my zoom a little because I'm sure that'll help some folks. It's going to ask us what branch do we want to have be the website effectively? What do we want to publish? We haven't done anything with branches yet, have we? No, of course we haven't. So if we look back here at code, we have just the one branch. What is a branch? It means a separate track of different files, so we can change one set and not affect the others. So we need a branch for the resulting HTML and CSS files for Hugo. So let's create, by coming into this little drop down here, we'll say this is for our GitHub pages, gh-pages, which I believe once upon a time was the required name for GitHub pages. And as a result, it's auto going to detect that we want to do stuff with GitHub pages, which is kind of cool. So down here, now that we've typed that all out, it gives us the option to, oh, do you want to create a branch from GitHub pages? Yes, I do. So if we go to our settings and we look at pages again, we'll see it automatically detected that this is going to use the GitHub branch, GitHub pages for our website. And it tells us, hey man, your site is ready to be published, and gives us a link. Now, right now, that link is going to be bonkers and doesn't make a whole lot of sense because we haven't hooked up Hugo yet. It's not. It's not actually doing anything for us. If you are wanting to run this blog on your own domain, like if I wanted to have jeremyviska.com pointed to here, then you can put this in here. There's a little bit of extra setup you'll have to do, and you'll need to explore that. That's beyond. I'm not teaching DNS on stream. That'll just be. Whew. So let's see. But what we do need to do is we do need to teach a little bit about. Yeah, in chat, it's always DNS. It is always DNS.
Well, it's actually not that bad. I mean, what you have to do is you have to set up an A record on your DNS and point to. I got 4 IP addresses here that I got in there, and they're specified in here, and you have to have a file, and it's literally called CNAME, not CNAME.txt, not CNAME.toml or anything else. It's literally just CNAME with a C as of Charlie, and you're good to go. I mean, it is not very difficult.
Yes. Although there's a quirk to that to Hugo, and I will talk about it just in case anyone else does want to do a custom domain and they need to know about this. I ran into that recently for one of our domains, the project we're working on together.
Yeah.
So there is a couple of gotchas. But yes, for the savvy folks, it is a matter of the A records have to point to GitHub, and you do need to do a little bit of configuration work in your Hugo, which we are going to do just to, or at least I'm going to show what the CNAME looks like. So let's see here. Okay, just double checking my notes here. And Henrik, I know you mentioned in chat offline, but I figure I would bring it up anyways, is that you ran into an issue with Chocolatey is not installing Hugo for you on that one?
Yeah. So I mean, the good thing is you can go to gohugo.io and download it. It's literally in a zip file, and if you click on that install Hugo, and scroll down to Windows, you download that zip file, and you literally just put it into as they say right there, create a subfolder in Hugo bin and Hugo sites or whatever, and then you're up and running. But it took me a little while to get it squared away. So yeah, so I'm way behind on you. So basically, long story short, I'm going to have to rewatch this video once it's published and then get this thing going.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that Hugo gives separate directions for the technical users. Here, just do this. For less technical, here's the step-by-step. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness of the community who's behind this to kind of guide you through all these individual little steps if you're not familiar with what you're doing. And you can see that this is one of the power of that little Chocolatey app, is that if it's doing all this stuff for you and it works without giving you trouble, then it's pretty useful. So to get back on track for the now we've got a couple of different bits and pieces. We can see that we've got a URL, and I'm just going to leave it at this github.io URL that it gave me automatically, and I'm okay with that. So let's show one of the nice things. Let's copy this link. Here in GitHub, once you've pushed your theme into this GitHub repository from your local machine, you don't have to do anything on your machine anymore. On your computer, depending on shortcuts, extensions, all that sort of thing, when you're looking at a code repository like this, you can hit dot on your keyboard and it will automatically redirect you to the same URL, but up here you'll notice it says, instead of github.com, it says github.dev. And now we're looking at the files that were in the system, but here we are able to edit them. So now I can look at that config.toml file here, and I can say my base URL is not example.org. It is the github.io path that we specified here. So now I can go ahead and save that, but we are on GitHub, and Git is all about commit is kind of your equivalent of save. So over here on the left-hand side, we have a few little menu pieces, and we started in Explorer, which lets us look at the files and edit them and see all the different pieces in here and everything. But what we need is we need this little source control, and we say what did we change about it? We updated the URL. It's just a descriptive note to yourself so that you can look at the history of what did I change. And for the lower tech folks and whatnot, I'm just definitely encouraging you to commit these things directly, not do any sort of extra steps. So just this little checkbox, and boop, there we go. So now if I go back to our github.com and I take a look at our files, we can see that our config.toml file was updated just now, and we updated the URL. So you see that little helpful comment will show up here to tell you a bit about what did you do. One other thing to be aware of is we can see that I was in my GitHub desktop, and I told it to push all of the stuff from the Hugo website into the repo, and you'll notice it didn't really include all of the folders. So that's maybe chat folks know a nice easy Git thing we can do to include the empties in some sort of config or option or whatnot. There's almost certainly a command line for it that I don't know off the top of my head. I don't usually have empty folders that matter. But our very next step is we now need to teach GitHub this little step, set up actions. Now, what does that mean? Well, up here in GitHub, there's a actions button, and it sounds a little scary. Build, test, and deploy your codes, code reviews, and branch manage. What? No. What this is simply a process by which when something happens to the GitHub repository, the files that you've put in here, it should do something for you. And this is one of the reasons that I'm going to definitely just link the guide that I'm using, because there are some different workflows that we can create, but we can also just make a new workflow. So I am going to set up a workflow for myself, and I get a brand new file, and I am going to name this Build Hugo. You can name it anything you want. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but it automatically creates a whole bunch of stuff in here, and I am going to replace all that with some pre-configured stuff. I am following a guide myself, and it's already run longer than the title claims because I'm doing some explaining as we're going. How to set this up in less than 30 minutes. So I will definitely be linking the shortcut that I'm using here, because it's a really good summary. So we'll go ahead and we're going to paste these steps. So what happens is whenever something changes the main branch, it is going to run the Hugo engine and push it to the GitHub Pages branch. That's all. And we want to publish that branch. And I might just do a blog post with all the links and copy the actions on this, because I'm looking at this going, I'm tweaking a couple things, and you guys are not going to be able to follow the exact copy and paste, so that's not going to help anyone. So I will do a blog post that has all of these steps broken out, links to all the different resources, and what stuff am I pushing out to, because I think that'll help a whole bunch. let's grab this template that I actually know works. That's always good. And we'll start that commit. And we want to have an action. Okay. So now we've got an action in our system that whenever anything happens to the main branch, it's going to run this automatically for us. It's kind of cool. So GitHub is going to do some auto magic work for us. Based on my experience, it usually only takes about 30 seconds or so, but this is doing that process, this conversion process right here, where it's taking the Hugo template site and what we've told it, and it's converting it to HTML. Now, we do have a failure. Something went wrong. I don't know what specifically went wrong. Okay, we need the extended version. Okay, I thought I had that. Super duper. Well, that's what I get for not testing everything on hand ahead of time. Let's see here. Just checking my notes on what did I miss.
So Hugo does come with 2 versions, and one is that extended version.
Yep. I'm just wondering how far back do I have to go to to fix the issue?
The thing is, I think it's more honestly the processor. So it may be that one does not exist in the GitHub build action, or I wonder if there is an action for the extended version.
I thought so, but let me see here. I might have the fix for this. Give me 1 second, everybody. This is the, hey, this isn't a paid class. Sometimes we didn't test everything. Okay. There is a little bit that I missed right in here. So very important that I go ahead and include some updated info for everyone on what should be in here. There we go. I have to specifically say extended Hugo. So there we go. Got something. So all of this does look like magic, but it should just be copy and paste. So hopefully that'll cruise right along. One of the things that I like about this, for those of you who are not familiar with what's the advantage of being on GitHub, is you can see how many different times you've changed things and kind of get a history of what did you change. And all those little notes that I've been writing, updated the URL, forgot something, it gives you a sense of when did something change. And as we were watching, that little circle turned into a check. So that action worked. What does that mean? Well, if we come and look at main, we've got our folder with the theme, we've got our config file, and we've got a few other bits and bobs that are necessary for the Hugo to know what to do. But if we switch to this little GitHub branches branch, we see a completely different set of files. What's in here? Well, check this out. Some of this might be familiar to you. Index.html, 404.html, sitemaps for things like RSS. We've got some CSS, which is all like the different style sheets and things like that. We've even got folders for tags and categories and whatnot. So that's kind of neat, right? Well, GitHub Pages, it does tend to run about 15 to 45 seconds behind, so once the action is done, it's not always immediately visible, but I've babbled just long enough that hopefully now when I click this link, there we go. We have a website. It's alive. Hello Henrik is live on github.io now. So now we're in a really kind of cool place. We've got the functional engine. Doesn't seem like a whole lot for us just yet, but Henrik, for your reference, you're absolutely right about the C name for the GitHub branches. It'll put it on that GH pages branch. And the trick to that, and for the techie folks following along, what you'll need to do is in the static folder, that's where that C name file gets created. So just as a quick aside while we're at it. Okay, so now what do we do to now make some content? We allegedly have created the Hugo site. We've configured the GitHub. What do we do now to make these new posts? Well, let's check this out. There's supposed to be a content folder. There isn't one, so we're gonna need to make that. So we're gonna add a file, and we'll create that. And you know, I like the web Visual Studio Code editor. So let's hit our little dot command to go back to it, because I think it's nice. And I'll show you why in just a second. So if we create a new folder called content, and we create a new file, hello world.md. Okay, so now if I head back to my let's see, I'm just taking a quick look at the documentation basics here. Whenever we want to create a new file, they told us the command is to do that on our local machine, and I'm not currently doing that, so I was checking to see what sort of info do I need to have in this file that I'm making right now. So let's test that out. If I did exactly what he told me instead, and I said Hugo new post test.empty, and I take a quick look at what's actually in that file. Okay, so it's content posts, and here's a little file. So let's take a look at it. We'll open this up, and I'll just do Notepad again, just so that way show you you don't need to have fancy tools. It's nice to, but you don't have to. It just gave us a little bit of info. It gave us a title, and is it in draft state, and what's the time and date stamp. So I'm going to steal this info, and I'm going to create a new folder in here called posts. There we go. And we'll move hello world into it, and we'll paste that info. So here's our new title, hello world. I'm going to say this is not a draft. And now what we can do is we can, if you do in the web editor, I wasn't sure about this, so that was part of the trying that out real quick. If you do control space, you get some of the formatting automatically. So for example, bold, headings, images, quotes, all that sort of stuff that you would need to have, we can do hello world inside of our little quotes. And up here in the upper right, I'll make this a little bigger here. In the upper right, we've got this little preview button. Let's hit that, and we can see, we'll get a preview of the markdown that we're writing over here as we're writing it. This is a test blog post going live around the world. And, oh, hi, Mark. So, okie dokie. So, let's see here. So, first post. For those not knowing the joke I'm making, a good friend Mark is giving lots of useful feedback in the comments as I'm going through things. So, if we go back to github.com, we'll see that now we've got this content post folder. It shows us that we've done first posts. We can see that the last change was 12 seconds ago, and we get this little tiny yellow dot right there. That lets us know that we've triggered a code action to happen, and it's currently running. It might take a little while, but we can also go take a look. And by the time I clicked on the actions, it's already done after about 24 seconds. So that's pretty good. Okay. And as I said, it does tend to run about 15 to 20 seconds, maybe sometimes as long as 45. So let's pop this open in a new tab. And so, yep, we don't have our new posts yet. That's adorable. All right, thanks. That's a good photo for. I'm okay with that. And if we refresh, there we are. Hello world. So we have hello world. This is a blog post. That's pretty cool. So not too shabby, and a lot of stuff automatically happened for us. It gave us a word count. It told us the estimated reading time. It showed when it
Fancy
was last.
smancy.
Yeah, I'm like, that's a pretty good theme. I'm tempted to potentially move my personal blog off of WordPress to this. And there's some different odds and ends that every theme will do differently. So we can decide, what are the things that we want to do for our site based on the tools that each of the themes gives us. So if I jump to this little one, it'll tell us lots of bits and pieces about, how do we do short codes like embedding YouTube clips? How do we do stuff like tagging authors? And how do we do stuff like here are all of the there's a fancy little term here called, is it front matter? I don't think of. Yeah. Okay. Hugo calls it front matter. Is that stuff we were editing up at the top of the folder here? So if we go back to our code and we go to our first post and we go, that was pretty good, but it's saying it was written by author, so that's kind of cruddy. Well, let's go ahead and open this up in the web editor. So we just told it title hello world, and this is the date, and that's not really enough stuff. Let's get this over here. We want more of this front matter, so we can set title, subtitle, date. As it said, drafts was an option. We can do authors. We can do some descriptive stuff. We can do images. So how will it preview for the Twitter cards and all those different embeds? We can give tags and categories. So, for example, let's do, this is author is, I guess, based on the documentation, it said do Jeremy as in these little bracket things, and we'll get like an author page about it. That sounds pretty cool to me. And if we want to do some different tags, they go in brackets like this. Okay, well, all right. Well, every theme will have a little bit of info about it, so you'll have to follow the docs for each of the different themes. But if we say that this is about AL, it's about .NET, it's about performance, and the categories on this, categories. So it's definitely a little more you do a lot more of the lifting. It's not as point and click as maybe a WordPress where you get like drop downs that you can pick the different categories for. But I don't have to define these as categories. They didn't have to already exist. So I could call this dev practices and best guidelines and all sorts of fun stuff like that, that now I can say, okay, that's pretty good. And maybe is there anything else I want? Nah, let's go with that. Let's see how it looks. So we'll improved first post, and we'll check those in. So it'll be about 60 seconds or so before that'll update. And if we cruise back on over to GitHub, one of the things that they don't have that I'm aware of is a nice, easy way to go back to github.com. So like you have just that like keystroke to just go doot, and now you're in the editor, and then can I go back?
Maybe if you do the back arrow up top.
Yeah, I think eventually you get back there.
Or do you do the dot again? I don't know.
Interesting. We got some errors. So apparently it did not so much like Oh, I think I did my little author string wrong.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So, okie doke. So there is a little bit of technicality to how you have to structure things just right. But once you've created one or two, you very much can copy and paste this right over to the next one. Ah, I forgot quotes. That's, I think, all I was complaining about. So I'll commit these right here. Missing quotes. Well, there we go.
And yeah, and that's where you make yourself a little template, right? So you
Yeah.
just
So once you've set up these different things once, it becomes really easy. And GitHub as a site understands Hugo well enough that you probably kind of notice we get this really nifty little formatting to show us what are the different pieces that are in this markdown. It understands Hugo.
right.
So it's kind of cool that it does that. Um, and it may take a moment or two. Let's see if it built. Oh, it is really not wanting to cooperate with me today. Okay. Unable to cast. Alright, so something about how I'm setting up my little author thing according to this theme is not the way I'm supposed to do it, so I will have to fix that. Yeah, so that's something theme specific, not something you're likely to run into. Because I did exactly what I thought I was supposed to do, but it looks like you're supposed to kind of create like a separate little author profile page or something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I skipped a step because I was going quick, and what
So
happens when you
you can see
hurry?
that TOML file that was right there.
Yeah.
Right there. I guess that's what you have to do.
Yep. So my site, and then under data authors. Okay. So, I go to here and I say, all right, well, his instructions say I need a little folder called data and one called authors. All right. Well, then fine. I'll do what you told me and your very carefully written instructions. Following the directions. Goodness. What kind of world are we coming to? Okie dokie. So, yep. This is URL. Sure. I don't really post a whole lot on my blog at the moment but that's fine. So we'll do that, and we'll do. I think I did full name in the link that I did before. I'm not going to use the translation I can't read. I'm not that brave. So, there we go. So each theme will have a lot of little specific bits and pieces, but effectively, if you get the Hugo installed, you get your GitHub account set up, you set up a repo, push the website into it, set up the action, you're done. And then from there on, it's just create different blog posts and be able to copy and paste the little headers, just update the info of what's more relevant to the new blog post. And typically, each theme has different approaches to how it will include things like images, but usually that's as straightforward as you just right here in the GitHub editor, you can say upload and upload the image and then link it right in your image, blah. The other nice thing about the markdown side of the world is they have these lovely things called like fenced code block. And one of the reasons I love fenced code block is that, for example, it knows AL. I know, I taught it, which still makes me laugh. But nonetheless, so, it'll understand the syntax of AL. Hello, everyone. Sure. So when we publish this, it will have that nicely formatted into the AL code for us. And message. Hello. And there we go. So let's trying stuff. We'll see. I think it was a matter of I don't do the quotes, and yes, yes, this does not comply with code best practices because I didn't do var. Sure. Chat giving me grief for bad AL code, and it's correct. I also don't return the boolean,
Right.
so
No, nor do you actually use that function anywhere.
nope. It will not pass any sort of code compliance. So
But I
I'll
mean,
be
it
all
is,
right with that.
but it's that I think is going to be one of the coolest things. I mean, because I mean, I don't know how many times you look at code on a blog and right, and kind of like, okay, trying to figure out what's actually going on,
Yep.
knowing that it's actually going to be,
That author tag is going to be my bane tonight because that's what it
yeah,
is again. I'm
yeah,
going to go get rid of it just so I can see the
yeah,
markdown.
yeah.
Good grief, because it's definitely that. All right. Yeah. Come on. Completely useless message, but that's okay. But yeah, the one of the things I like a lot about the code fences is that they typically also gives you all sorts of wonderful little syntax sugar that you don't have to do anything for. So, like for example, here we've got this TOML file that I was able to hit copy. I'm willing to guess that when this does reload and publish in just about 30 seconds or so, that AL code fence will be a copy and paste that we can just hit, which is fantastic compared to doing like a screenshot of a chunk of code, which has been pretty common practice for a long time and not always the best because you sit there having to type in everything you can read. Like, come on. So, yeah. So, fingers crossed that this will publish. GitHub does, you know, it's free, so it's not instant. So it goes into a queue, and then usually within a minute or so it updates. So hopefully we'll see it before things are wrapping up. But I think we've kind of gone a little longer than I intended to, but that's the nature of things sometimes. I will see if I can write up a blog post tomorrow, but I will put all the links to the resources that I've mentioned as far as these different bits and pieces. I will include a link to the step-by-step guide I was using, and I will get I am going to leave the repo up and running here. Hello, Henrik. This is public, so you can come right into the workflow here, this Build Hugo one, and go ahead and copy and paste this right for your own. It is a public repo. So, which, actually that's a fun idea too, is one of the things that you can do with these is you can add little readmes and that will put a section right under here. So, I can also, here is the guide that I was using as my example one. I can throw that in there and you guys can have it. So there we go. There's one link. So, and there we go. Okay.
Yep, and as you say, we do have the copy icon on there as well.
We do. Yep. And it looks like it's mostly processing correctly on the syntax of that, so that's cool. It's hard to tell. I'm not sure what we'd have to do a code paste for a big chunk, but now we've got, based on this theme, we've got a tags section that I think I probably have to do more configuration work. I didn't read the instructions. But we can see that it gets into categories, it gets the different tags, so all that stuff is just automatically happening for us, and we get some really nice options. So that's the general idea, is that you can use this and GitHub pages. You can get a blog up and running. If things go well, it only takes about 10 minutes or so. If things go stumblingly, it takes about an hour.
Yeah.
But the end
I,
result
I, I think at
is
some point in time we're going to have to do a follow-up video for this kind of to show a little bit the abbreviated version and the if everything works right, this is how it goes. And I
Mhm.
also do want to point out there are actually other services that you can actually put on top of this. There's something called forestry.io that I haven't played with yet. I will be playing with it because it's basically a way to even simpler edit your posts. Um, I as somebody who write codes every day for a living, I writing them in VS Code or something like that is not something that scares me at all. But
Mhm.
maybe that's not necessarily your cup of tea. Maybe something like this, using this thing is better. I don't know. I haven't played enough with it, but I will definitely get it, play with it, and I might just in my new blog that's coming out um, shortly, uh, kind of do a abbreviated version of what I did.
Yeah, because it looks like this is kind of a. Do you want to have built it all yourself, or do you want us to throw it together for you? And as Henrik pointed out, this is if you're doing this for personal projects, up to 3 sites and up to 3 users per site, zero. It
Yeah,
is free. You do have to have some activity on your website to have it
yeah,
not be archived, but
this approach does not work if you're trying to archive a website or a blog like I am. But then you do it once. And I should also mention there are tools available that will basically take your WordPress site and scrape it for you and
oh, nice.
create all these things here. Um, I have it up somewhere. Let me. Um, See, the thing is, I've used this so little
Yeah.
that I have a hard
Oh,
time
absolutely.
figuring out. But there is a component for that. I can share my screen here.
Oh yeah, yeah. The
Um,
GoHugo.com has a section on how do you migrate from some of the different
right,
different parts.
and I use this a thing here called Simply Static,
Mm-hmm.
and it basically created 312 pages and files and dumped them all into a zip file, and you download that, and you're good to go. I mean, Um,
Oh.
there's probably going to be some formatting issues when you try and do that,
Mm-hmm.
but that's always going to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Woo.
yeah, oops, sorry, but that's why you play with it a little bit. But there's a couple of different ones.
Yeah, looks like they've got a bunch of migrate toolkits and whatnot. So, like,
Yeah,
if you're on WordPress right now, there's a plugin you can run that'll convert apparently all of the post pages, metadata, all the tags and category stuff. It'll try to bring those over too. So, quite a bit of tools for it.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
neat idea. So yeah, it felt like something that would be interesting and novel enough for folks to work around with. If you're looking to get started with blogging around Business Central and you want just, hey man, can you do me a favor and like I'll make you an admin of a GitHub repo. Can you just get it started? Feel free to reach out. That's fine. I didn't know this existed a month ago, so it is not a difficult thing to get your head around for sure. I've helped a couple of people with some mission and nonprofit based things. I've set up the initial site for them and then showed them through some of the basics of maintaining it, and they are pretty happy and loving it because of just it gives them a nice, easy sort of thing. And if you're working with other people, like if you're a company that potentially wants to do some different, like, or nonprofits, and you want to just be able to have other people help you out with creating some of this, that's one of the nice things about being on GitHub here is on your access here, you can invite other people. Well, I'd have to log in, but you can invite other people to come edit these code repo with you, and you get a full history of everything they're doing as well. So you can kind of take some teamwork and put something together as a group, and that's pretty nice too. So.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you'll be seeing more Hugo-related activity around in the space in the near future. And I will once again remind and plug people, although I think everyone who would watch this is probably already going to go to the Beernar if they're able to. I will remind people that it is up and coming, and you should probably come to it.
Yeah, lots of fun, and good information.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking a little bit about something Hugo related this Friday. So that'll be fun. 4:30 Central European time. What time is that Pacific?
It's 7:30 a.m. for me, so
Ah.
I always sit and weep a little bit when you Europeans sit there with a nice ice cold beer, and yeah, I sit maybe with a nice glass of cold milk if even. But yeah, but it's worth it. I think I've learned a lot by going to these. And it just shows how nice of a community we do have in our relatively small world.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Oh, and if you're thinking about going, you should probably sign up soon because I think there's 100-person cap on that.
I think so.
I think the seats are almost full. That'll be nice. All right. Well,
Coolio. Well, I
this has
guess
been
that's it for today.
absolutely. And like I said, I will update the YouTube description with some links. What I'll probably do is just for the laughs is I will update the YouTube description with links, but I'll also put all of them here in the Hello Henrik repo. And hopefully this will encourage a couple of people to get started with that. I assure you, as you're going through the steps by steps, not explaining each step, it does feel faster. So, following along with the guides, it really is a pretty straightforward process. This gives you you kind of end up running about 10, 12 commands, and you're alive. So it's pretty good. All right, everybody. Well, I appreciate the folks who stuck around, or if you're watching this later, I appreciate the views later.
Sounds good. Have a good night.
Yep. And take care, everybody.